What's going on, FAU fans? My name is Kevin Fielder, host, I guess, of the Inside the Burrow podcast, sponsored or I guess hosted by FAU Owl's Nest. I'm joined by, we let him back for a second time. We're not sure if that was my decision yet, but Mike Birdman is back for the second straight week. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. How you doing?
I'm doing great, and we're joined by the voice of FAU, the guy who looks closest to men's basketball coach John Jacobs, as much as he probably does not like to hear that all the time.
Take the hat off. Take the hat off. Give us the full. Give us the full.
I haven't cut my hair in a while, but look, it's thin. It's so thin. It'll be back and bald by the time football season comes. Well, I've just been lazy and not taking care of myself.
Yes. Ken Lavicka is his name. Figured that should probably be the thing I started with, but that was the thing I ended with. Ken, how you doing today?
I'm great. I would ask you guys how you're doing, but you answered the question to one another already, and I hope that you are paying special attention to this functioning, though not plugged-in TV behind me that's not at all distracting with anything that we're doing right now.
It's no more distracting than the old school White Sox hat.
Yeah. I'm not going to, in their dire time of need, the worst team in baseball, I'm not abandoning them. And again, we've all been FAU basketball fans, lowest of lows, and we didn't abandon them. So we're not abandoning the White Sox, or me at least, either. So you can deal with it, Birdman.
Although I do personally think you should consider abandoning them now, because it does not look like it's getting any better down the line.
Just completely jump ship. Just look for the nearest piece of land. I mean, Kev, you're actually like it's been considered. Like, I'm not saying I'm not. It's been considered. Okay.
It is dismal. And you're right. We did have some really bad basketball years. We had some bad football years too. What do you think was worse? Like, if the lowest of the low, was it lowest with football or was it lowest with basketball?
Basketball did not have a head coach relieved of his duties over alleged drug consumption. So football, the lowest point of football was when I visibly saw Howard Schnellenberger walk out of the stadium after it was announced that Carl Pelini had been fired, and he looked distraught, near tears, and said, "This is damned embarrassing." Like that. That to me was probably the low point in my 17 years and change in Boca.
He was so upset with that hire. He didn't like it from the beginning.
I understand that. I think that the hire ended up being fine because it brought in a lot of NFL caliber talent. Like, I enjoyed Carl Pelini. Was he different? Sure. Was he as accessible as Howard? Was he complete 180? No to the accessible. 180, yes. But I never had an issue with Carl Pelini. I've legitimately never had one singular issue with any coach that I've worked with since 2007 at FAU. But I also understand now in retrospect, you want to talk about culture all the time. Culture from a cultural fit clearly wasn't good for FAU. But again, he did bring in good NFL talent. So the dichotomy, like looking back now, the dichotomy, the question of Carl Pelini, it's a little bit more complex than what a screw up, right?
Now, Ken,
I don't know how you come back from that either. I would imagine he's still coaching in high school or somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know where he ended up.
I don't know.
I looked it up. I did look it up a couple years ago. I was curious, and I think it was around the time where.
Well, he was with his brother. He was with his brother at Youngstown State for a while.
Oh, yeah.
You remember he took over as interim head coach at somewhere up in Ohio in the MAC. But then he ran afoul of the law, is my understanding, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was domestic, I think, something.
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
don't think we really need to get into the specifics about why Carl Pelini was fired from a MAC school on an FAU podcast. Now, Ken, I do want to ask: were you one of the few media members, who survived a daily joke from Lane Kiffin at your expense? Were you spared from those, like? Because everyone else got them. Me included.
Yeah. So I also want to, and I promise I'm not being a jerk here, but with my role with FAU, like this is something that I fought for a long time. Is Ken media? No, I'm a spokesperson for whoever the head coach is, and then I'm a spokesperson for the program to the fans, the conduit. So from the media standpoint, like no, I'm not a media person who got zinged by Kiffin regularly. I'm just a person who worked with Lane who got zinged regularly by Lane Kiffin. So yes, overall the question, yes, and I don't think he knew what to make of me at first, and I don't think he knew what to make of FAU at first either. And let's not forget, he came from the world of USC and Alabama and the Oakland Raiders, the highest levels, and then he comes to Boca Raton, and we're setting up interviews in his office with people, and he's got really young 20-something people asking him questions, and that's the entirety of the media that he's
some of them weren't 20-something either.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm sure it was a massive culture shock for him, but I think his way of easing people in, and this is why I think he's been unfairly characterized at other places he's been. He likes to bust what. Like that to me, just translating and getting to know him, that's his way of trying to diffuse his anxieties of being around mass groups of people. That's how he connects to people, is by throwing jabs at them. And if you can take it, he brings you into the circle. And if you can't, he doesn't care, and he's going to keep doing it. But that's something I appreciated about Lane, is that nobody ever felt like they were being picked on, because he uniformly would throw jokes and zingers and shots at everybody collectively. And I think I thought that was fantastic. And he endeared himself to people, I think, largely through that, and winning a lot of football games.
It was all like Howard, right? Like you get what you get, and you're going to like it or you're not going to like it, but this is me, and that's it. And Howard
didn't have a filter. Like Howard, whatever came to Howard's mind, and Howard, and bless the man, I loved him to death. But he also, he always had a solution. He always had an answer. He always knew. Like with radio,
Howardism, right?
Yeah, there was one time I would tape the pregame interviews with him. Before games, I would go to the team hotel and record interviews with them, or on the road, just meet them in the lobby or one of the team rooms. And there was this one instance I was having problems with my recorder, and I couldn't get it to start. And I looked at him like, "Hold on, coach, hold on." And he was always patient, but he's sitting there and he goes, "Ken, did you check the treble?" I mean, it has absolutely nothing to do with what the issue was. It wouldn't be a fix for anything. But that's what I loved about Howard is, hey, why the hell not? And so they were just two different. Howard and Lane were totally different, though, because Howard, he would tell you exactly how he felt, when he felt it. And for Lane, it was just sort of a, hey, are you going to be able to take me razzing you a little bit? Can you hang? Just really different personalities, but same type of locked in, focused knowledge of football, being able to teach the game, but just two wildly different personalities.
I think the thing about Lane is that, and we'll move on from this, but like when you look at where he started, right? He was never at a smaller school. He was at Tennessee. He was at USC. He was in the NFL. He was at Alabama under Nick Saban, right? And you look at those media rooms compared to what FAU's has, and for the most part, it was me and a whole bunch of college students, right? Like, it is going to be entirely different on how you handle those two groups, because you can't be the same way that you are at Alabama at FAU, because
right.
It's not going to be the same for you, right? Like, I mean, you're going to have completely different people covering your program, and I think that's also why
the question that a kid asks you, you can't like shun him, like you think could a reporter from ESPN or
you have five people in the media room period at FAU compared to the 35-40, right? If you cut off one person's access at Alabama, no one's batting an eye. That's just whatever. Like that's just a thing that happens.
I think with Lane, and he had spent really almost the entire lead up to FAU, except for some good moments at Alabama, getting panned and bagged on and made an example of. And I don't think he was very trusting of people when he came in. He might still not be. I'm not going to text him and be like, Lane, do you trust people? But when he came in, let's not. And Kev, you've been around enough media rooms and in enough press conferences at various levels of college athletics. And Birdman, you have common sense. Like, there's a lot of egos. And when you're in a place like Tennessee or Alabama or in the NFL, there's a lot of media members, and they have a certain level of bravado, and they're going to put it up against the acumen of the coach, and battles are going to ensue. And that's what Lane knew. He came to FAU. Lane knew that he was going to be the alpha. He knew he was going to dictate the way things went. There wasn't going to be a ton of pushback on things. But instead of just being he could have easily just ramrodded everybody. But what he did is he made himself accessible. He embraced it, even though it was vastly different from any big time place that he knew. And in the course of doing that, I think that he put people at ease. He helped those young people who were in media feel like, wait, I'm actually able to converse with this guy who was on an NFL sideline less than a decade ago, who's the offensive coordinator at Alabama. And I think that other than the winning, I think that's why Lane has left such a good impression in Boca when he went to Ole Miss, is because he really conducted himself and treated people fairly and nicely. And I think a lot of that is, for the first time, he didn't have to worry about someone coming in and trying to attack him. I think that's really the core of why that was.
No, we definitely embraced him. And it was so sad that when we were playing for a conference championship in 2019 against North Texas, right? He walked. I remember my seats are in section 103, right on the field, first row. Me and Katie, we lean over the railing, and we're in the huddle with the defense. And he came out of the tunnel and looked around, and just the disappointment on his face at the amount of fans that were there for a conference championship game when we were 10-2 or 10-3 or whatever it was at that point.
So what do you guys tell people when fans of other schools or just the general public as a whole bags on FAU's attendance? I'm just curious. What do you guys tell people with that?
I think you look at, I don't want to use this word as an insult, but when you look at smaller school college football at a group of 5 level, at an FCS level, and even at a lower Power 5 level, the attendance is always an issue. There is not a school that feels comfortable with where their attendance is when they're playing at a group of 5 level. And if you look at the American, right, I mean, there are probably some schools that had success. SMU had success, but they're a defined program from the 80s that had the death penalty put on them and, had to recover from that. But Dallas is a completely different place.
And SMU still doesn't draw.
I mean,
they're a major metropolis, right?
They're not selling out games, right?
Right.
So,
we're in Boca Raton. We're in like the equivalent of like the Beverly Hills of Florida, right?
Yeah,
or something like that.
I think
the draw is not going to be college sports here.
Right. The only reason I ask is because I've been at FAU for a really long time, and inevitably every conversation I have is, why don't more people come to football games? Why don't more people come to football games? I think it's the nature of the level of college football that FAU is in. I think that it's been existing in conferences where there isn't an inherent road team other than FIU traditionally that has come in. That Friday night against USF is going to be massive, obviously. Yeah. But you're asking, and this is a college football program that has not even hit 25 years old. It could not rent a car without a cosign for it with its current age. Okay, so
Ken,
it's a young program that it's aspirational. It's 30,000 a game aspirational. Yes. Is it realistic? Yes. Is it going to happen now? No. Let the attendance, let FAU and the administration worry about it.
It's going to happen. And I'm going to tell you when it's going to happen, because we talk about this a lot. It's definitely, I call it generational, right? So these other schools that have been around for 100 years, let's talk about pick one. Alabama, right? Alabama has been playing football for 120 something years, right? Arguably, I don't know the exact number, but they've been playing football for that long. Think about how many people in a family who went to Alabama that long ago and have been born, grown up, had kids. They go to Alabama. They donate to Alabama. They go to the games. Their kids have kids. Boom. All of a sudden, you're spider webbing out this huge fan base, right? That's the people that are selling out on Saturdays.
Yeah.
Those are the schools that have generational fan bases, alumni that have children that are alumni, that have children that are alumni. And that's the difference. We don't have that yet. Our first fans of FAU football graduated in 2004, 2005.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
they're just old enough now to have kids.
Right.
Well, not just old enough, but you know what I mean? They're just have kids old enough now to go to the games and enjoy them.
It's just a frustrating. People get so hysterical over it, and it's the common insult to lob to FAU fans. And I understand coaches coming in and saying, "Oh man, I wish this thing was jam packed," but also. It's FAU's reality, and it doesn't mean there's not passionate fans. It doesn't mean that there's not people who don't care an awful lot. FAU right now, I think the true marker of a fan base that wants to succeed or a school that has a base that wants to see it push forward is NIL. Is that good? I don't know. Is that the reality? Absolutely. And FAU, from an NIL perspective, is in a significantly greater position than the vast majority of the AAC. So you can sit there and count all the people in seats with FAU football. But one thing that is tangible and that we know is that there is a base for things to progress further, I think, than a lot of other collection of schools within its own conference, and even bottom end of some of these Power 5 programs as well.
Yeah, no, we're from what I hear, we're doing good with that, and we should be proud of that. And I think it's more embarrassing to be one of these other schools like Western Kentucky, who's been playing football for 100 years. I don't know. Yeah, they're not better than us.
I think the interesting thing, right, and this is probably a great segue into, I guess, current FAU state. Like, you look at the basketball team, they go to the Final Four, and I think we all agree unanimously that last season was the loudest that stadium has ever been. Because when you get a team put on the map like that, right, and they're able to compete at the national stage, and the Boca Bowl and the American Championship in football is entirely different from the NCAA tournament. And so when you're able to compete at that level and put your name at that level and show that you can compete with those teams, people are going to come to the games. And now the stadiums are entirely different sizes. It's 30,000 compared to a couple of thousand, but it's almost the same way that I feel like football probably has to make a playoff or get close to making a playoff for that level of fan attraction to come. Because if you make the playoffs and you compete against Power 5 programs at that stage, you're no longer the little guy, right? You're no longer little brother. You're at the same level as them. And so that
people like winners. That's right. People like winners. Like,
I just don't think that I don't think ultimately in the grand scheme of things, it matters. Would it help? Absolutely. Perception wise, would it be beneficial? For sure. But the whether there's 10,000 or 20,000 empty seats in the football stadium on a Saturday, FAU has shown that doesn't keep the program from winning and hoisting trophies and doing that whole thing. And that's just, FAU is not the only one. And I think at the end of the day, there is this inherent chip on shoulder that FAU fans have, and they should, to try and constantly defend. But this, it's hot out. There's so many other schools in Florida. There's so many other things to do. You don't have
right
to
there,
do that.
Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, like that. You don't have to do that though. That's such the South Florida fan fallback. Who cares? Because at the end of the day, FAU has found that they can still win championships in many sports, including the revenue sports, and it's okay. So stick to that and don't worry about it. Go to the games. Go to the games. We'd love to see you at the games, but stop thinking that you have to defend the honor of FAU. Trust me when I tell you, because I've seen it at the bottom of the bottom in a multitude of ways. FAU is just fine and going to continue to be just fine.
Absolutely. And a lot of these schools that are kind of like throwing shade on FAU, the closest they'll ever be to a Final Four is when we step into their arena to play them.
Yeah, and I think you also look at, like, the way that the basketball team has been able to recover, right? And I don't think John Jacobs ever wanted to replace 10 guys. I don't think he wanted to go to the transfer portal and go find 10 new basketball players in the span of 3 weeks. But when you're at this level, right, and you're competing at this level, the guys that they acquired from basketball standpoint, talking to people who understand their recruiting, Leland Walker was a high major player who got high major interest. Kai Tandy probably goes high major if he enters the portal a little bit earlier. I don't remember if he entered immediately. You have these international guys who were, to some degree, high major players, right? Like Max Langenfeld, I've heard, had high major interest, but chose FAU because of the opportunity. And so it should be encouraging, as you mentioned, Ken, that like despite the attendance concerns or the question marks that you have, football and basketball are still competing at a higher level, or to an extent of like maybe punching above their weight to some degree in terms of recruiting.
There's just no correlation. There's quite literally zero correlation. And does it help the financial bottom line? Yes. Is there any correlation between attendance and winning? No. There's just not. So FAU fans need to get out of, and honestly, college fans as a whole, and especially AAC fans, need to get out of the business of attendance means success. That's just not. I have been, even in the lowest stages of FAU basketball, been to arenas across the southeastern portion of the United States, Conference USA, Sun Belt, and there's no student sections that have ever been louder than FAU's. It's just not. FAU doesn't have people that show up to the games. Neither do you. Like, stop. So, but to your point though on Jacobs, what's impressed me about him to this point is that, I mean, Kev, you're right. His priority was to keep around as many players from the core as he could. But I also think he came in with a lot of realism. It was going to be very difficult because there was going to be a lot of suitors, and these guys don't know him. And these guys deserve to be able to talk and get theirs and explore opportunities. And so he came in, his priority was keep him. But he had the full understanding that there was a good chance that nobody was going to stay, and he had a plan, and there was no panic. And I think that how he's been able to completely overhaul this roster with the high major talent, with the experience, playing in March, playing as one seeds in conference tournaments, being in the NCAA tournament, from top to bottom, I maintain from top to bottom, this is the most unique talent-filled roster that FAU has had in its history. And I don't mean that as any disrespect to the last 2 years of FAU basketball. On paper, from a tangible recruiting grade standpoint, this is the best roster that FAU's ever had. Does it come together? I don't know. FAU's never really been in a situation like this before where you've had to completely press the reset button after robust success and have to try and maintain that. But this is as good a 2 months of roster rebuild as any FAU fan could have possibly conceived in the recesses of their mind, knowing that entire roster was going to leave for other opportunities. Honestly, it's been really, really impressive.
I think my expectations have been knocked aside. Really, I think that Coach Jacobs and the entire staff have really done a knockout job. I was not expecting the level of player that we're able to get, and I think that, to what you said, if you were able to take last year's team and rank them, every player there 1 to 10 on their skill level, right, and you took this year's team, the recruits coming in, and you gave them all 1 to 10, and you added those up, I think the new team coming in is going to be, on paper, like you said, extremely more talented than we've had in the past. We're going to be bigger and taller. We're going to be fast. We got great guards. I love the fact that we're able to go get international players with ease now, right? We have an awesome connection with Coach Jacobs, and
that's the Jacobs way, and that's the Drew way. So I you know, it's funny.
Todd too. He's got deep roots overseas too.
I actually don't think that a lot of FAU fans know that where I actually went to college, because it was not FAU.
I know that.
But I think that there's, and I got this sense during the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago. Man, how excited as a grad to see.
Did someone say that to you?
Oh yeah, a lot of people. God's honest truth. Before I came down to South Florida at 22 years old, I had never heard of FAU. I had not.
You came down. Rex Walters was the basketball coach.
Yeah, he was in the last year before he went to Campbell, and then decided not to go to Campbell, and then came back to FAU, and then 6 seconds later went to San Francisco. Yes, that was
So for a little story here, I started going to college right about the same time Ken got into town. And we became friends because there was really nobody around in the arena. It was me and Phil and,
you, me,
guys and Ken.
Yeah. I was a young guy. I had no friends.
He had no friends. He had no girlfriend. He had no family. Oh. Right? He had hair, more hair on his head than his chin.
Yeah.
And we my God, do you remember the arena, Ken? There were no suites.
Yeah.
Wooden bleachers. Do you remember the wooden bleachers?
I got there as they were coming out.
They were coming out. We had wooden bleachers. I remember my first year at FAU. There were wooden bleachers. I remember looking up, and I think I just missed the tournament, the first appearance in the NCAA tournament. And I remember being like, man, this is so cool. I love college basketball. I can't wait to go to a March Madness and watch FAU.
Yeah.
It took a few years.
20 years later.
Right.
I'm gray.
Actually get like double-digit wins.
I'm gray. You're bald.
Yeah.
5 coaches.
But
I'm here.
Kevin was born.
Yeah. He was a zygote at that point. But I went to Valpo. I got my undergrad. I graduated from Valparaiso.
No one knows where that is, Ken.
Valparaiso is in Northwest Indiana, but the reason I knew of Valpo was Bryce Drew and the shot and beating Ole Miss. And so it's funny how there's parallels between that, where I didn't know about Valpo until their NCAA tournament success. A lot of people didn't know about FAU until its respective NCAA tournament success. So this stuff absolutely matters. But my freshman year at Valpo was Scott Drew's only year as the head coach, succeeding his father as the head coach at Valparaiso. And that Valpo program was chock full of Europeans and Eastern Europeans. A big man anchored the whole thing. His name was Ritus Grafs, and he was a big Eastern European dude. He was a 5. He was their best player. But that was the Homer Drew, the Drew family playbook, was recruit overseas when nobody else was really doing it. And then Scott brought that same philosophy into his rebuild at Baylor. And then we've seen what that playbook has turned Baylor into. And that's where John Jacobs has really, as someone who was in Europe already before he went to Gonzaga and then to Baylor, he already had all the ties. And so all of this stuff, why wouldn't you, if the whole roster's leaving, why wouldn't you go use your connections that you have for decades in Europe? And FAU fans, like, this is going to be the John Jacobs playbook is, hey, you may not have heard of these guys, but trust me, in European circles, these are big deals, and FAU is about to become a destination school.
If they couldn't play and they weren't going to be able to contribute and put up numbers, they wouldn't be here. Like, that's just it. And I love the Jacobs hire. I love the fact that we were able to get John Jacobs from Baylor. But you think about it, 3 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to get him. Right?
No,
it would have been.
I think that there's a lot of all these international guys. I don't know about these guys. You didn't quit acting like you knew who Nick Boyd was.
No one knew who Nick Boyd was, and no one
else Davis was. You would never heard of Elijah Martin. Like, stop it.
Stop it. Right? Nick.
It's always that thing of, like, the coach knows more because he's talking to people over there who know who these guys are, right? Like, I promise if you ask a German basketball expert on Max Langenfeld, he'll be able to give you a 10-page essay about the guy. You ask me, you, and the guy who covers college basketball nationally, he doesn't know who that is because he's not on the radar, right? And so, like, I
not watching a lot of second division German basketball.
I can't even find second division German basketball.
But I have watched some film on him, and I'm excited. He's a great player, man.
Look at you, Spo.
It's the same thing, right? Lithuanian big. They just got Matas. I'm gonna butcher his last name, so I won't even try.
Oh, I'm setting up my own training camp come August, my own pronunciation training camp to make sure I'm good to go by game number 1. Because
do you actually do that?
To be no, I need it this year though, because this is going to be without question. This is a new era of FAU basketball. This is a new challenge for Ken Lavicka, because never has he had a roster, football or basketball, that's going to be as initially challenging as this one for the good guys, for the home team.
We got to send your recordings to the Olympic Committee.
Yeah.
Now,
look, I'm well versed. Yeah.
Now, Ken, I do want to know, what's the hardest name you've had to pronounce who played on an FAU roster? What's the name that just messed you up?
I don't know if it's the hardest name, but this is the most confounding situation involving a name that I've ever had at FAU. Okay. We all remember, at least if you've been an FAU football fan over the last, 12 years, you remember Dijon Smith.
Yeah.
Outstanding corner, played in the NFL, one of the best secondary players in the history of FAU football.
For sure.
For the first 3 years of his career, he went by the name DJ Fry Smith. DJ Fry Smith. DJ Fry Smith. And we kept calling him that over and over and over and over again. DJ Fry Smith. And then his senior year, he showed up to camp and he said, "My name's Dijon." Okay. His family called him Dijon. Everybody in his circle called him Dijon. Yet he didn't bother to correct anybody the first 3 years of his career. So he just called him DJ Fry Smith, the roster DJ Fry Smith, when nobody actually called him that for 3 whole years, until finally his senior year, he's like, "It's Dijon." Fair enough. We could have probably settled this 2 years ago. And so that it's not the first time, and it won't be the last time, where a player will go through FAU for a couple of years and we call them a certain pronunciation, a certain name, and then they get to their senior year and they're like, "Oh, it's actually pronounced," or people call me this. It's like, guys, you can bring this up your sophomore year. It's okay.
Like, we won't be mad at you guys. Right, we won't be mad at you.
For your friends, your family, we want to be calling you the correct name. If we're mispronouncing it, butchering it, tell us. And some guys just don't care. But I know if it was me, because my last name has been pronounced everything over the course of my 39 years on the planet. I appreciate the fact when someone says, "Hey, Lavicka," and it rolls off the tongue and then it's corrected and the mistake's never made again. I don't want to be the one that people think is intentionally butchering this or not taking the time to learn it. Sometimes you need the athlete to step up and say, "Hey, Ken, it's this." Great. And then I'll never call them that again.
World famous FAU alum Ken Lavicka. It rolls off the tongue.
That's right. That's right. I feel like at this point there needs to be a discussion about an honorary degree, or I need to suck it up and take a class so I can say that I at least took some credits at FAU.
You could join the Alumni Association.
I could still join the Alumni
Association. Yep, there's community. There's definitely community members, and I think we have a connection to get you the information on that too. So.
We might have one there. Now,
shout out Katie.
Now, to that same degree, though, that like what we were talking about with basketball, I think it's also equivalent to football, right? Because it's a little bit different, the pathway going from Kiffin to Taggart to Herman. But I think that, like, if you had asked me when they were hiring the replacement for Taggart, I would have told you Tom Herman was off the board, because the buzz at that point was he's getting a Power 5 job. It was Colorado at that point. They obviously went a completely different direction, both culturally and I guess
sneaky good hire right there. Another one, right?
But like, I don't think that like people realize that getting Tom Herman at FAU is a big get, right? Like, you don't just go and get that guy because you are FAU. You get that guy.
Yeah, I agree, but I would hope that anybody with their proper synapses firing in their brain could sit and see Tom Herman getting hired by FAU and say, pretty good. That's a pretty ambitious hire. So ultimately, it was a big time hire, and it's going to prove to be a big time hire. Tom Herman, the acumen, the ability to bring him to Florida Atlantic to come back after what was, this is just me speaking. This is not me speaking for. This is just me speaking. Him being treated wildly unfairly at Texas, which plenty of coaches have been treated unfairly.
They all.
Steve Sarkisian is going to be treated unfairly eventually.
It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, it's the Texas way.
It's a tough crowd there.
Way. Yeah, no doubt. But I think that when you can go out and you can hire Tom Herman as your head coach, and his last stop was a lot of winning at Texas, that shows you the profile of where the program has gone at Florida Atlantic, and the way that it came from. We were talking about the Pelini era coming to an end when we started talking. The way Charlie Partridge sort of set a base of at least sanity within the program, right? Like the chaos dissipated, and then you brought in Lane, and the winning came, and then Taggart came in, and I love Willie. I will not say anything bad about Willie Taggart because he is an exceptional human being. Was the football lacking? Yeah. Could they ever find any consistency? No. It was difficult. He didn't play his first game until October in year number 1, going through the COVID year. That's going to screw up any plan that any coach had. But then to be able to bring in Tom Herman, and I'm super excited for year 2. Because I think that what they've been able to do post spring ball, fortifying the defense, and then bringing in Wilkie Denaud, by the way, who I covered in high school when he was at John Carroll. That guy is an absolute monster. I don't know how it's even possible that Rock and Herman were able to get him to FAU. But speaking of steals, like, Jesus, man, that right there is you show up to a thrift store and you end up walking out with a Versace out of there. Like that's just good stuff right there.
Yeah, it's been impressive. And we had Herman on the podcast last week, and he talked about how close we were last year, even with all the leftover, I don't know, for lack of a better word, crap in the locker room and all the funk that he had to like filter through. We were just there, and we lost so many games by one score, right? I think this year's the turning point. I really do. I really think this year's the turning point. I think 7 wins is kind of bottom of the barrel for us this year, looking at the schedule. And I think that we have the pieces in place now to stop these other teams from scoring and to put us over that hump where we're going to actually win the games now.
Yeah. I'll let you guys speak to that. I'll call the game. I'll call the games. But Kev, I think you would agree that when it comes to a lot of change,
you don't think wait, Ken, wait. You don't think we're there? You don't think we're gonna be better?
I'm not saying I don't think we're there. What I'm saying is that it does me no good is the voice of the school to be putting my win prediction.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like this speaks to me not being media. This is me. Like Tom Herman, to me, has put together one hell of a roster, and the work they've done post-spring is unbelievably impressive. I don't know what's going to happen in the fall. I have absolutely no clue. I do remember FAU going to Tampa and putting 56 on mighty USF. I just want to make sure that I put that out there.
Can we clip that? Hey,
I was there for that.
To clip that and just post it on Twitter and just see how the fan bases react.
Anytime, Kevin, I do anything in an official FAU capacity, I'm just going to make sure that gets inserted into it at any point. Well, they at USF can go debate what dates they go to the ACC. I'm going to continue to discuss us laying 56 on them on their homecoming in their stadium.
Their home here. Yeah. Enjoy the homecoming L. Right. I remember your call vividly.
But I also think that FAU is in a decidedly good spot. So again, you and Kevin can make the win predictions. I will say in my capacity that Tom Herman and that coaching staff has done a hell of a job, sort of as Herman put it, getting the guys in there who now they've committed to the coach. They've committed to the coaching staff. There's no holdover from a previous regime, and now it's time to go to work, and they have the talent to go to work and do some really special things.
Everybody that's here in that locker room now wants to be there.
Yeah,
and they're bought in, and that's going to make a huge difference. And Ken, real quick, you said you're going to be calling the games. We know you're the voice of the Owls. What's going on with Chris Bartels? You want to give him a shout out? What's going on? We heard the news. Well, and I love Chris Bartels. He's a member of the alumni board at FAU. He's a legendary FAU player, number 27, right? You used to call his games.
Yeah, God, I'm old.
God, man, it's gonna be weird. Now, I'm sure it's gonna be weird not having him.
Yeah, it's tough. Around. It's tough. I mean, after 11 years, that was certainly the longest broadcast duo in the history of FAU, the 11 years that Chris and I spent with one another. And Chris and I came together. Chris just wanted to kind of dabble in it, and it turned into a long-term partnership. And I promise it's nothing nefarious why Chris is leaving. We actually got an extra year out of him than what the initial plan was. He lives in Tampa now. He's got Philip Rivers-esque number of kids now.
He's got a soccer team.
He is spawning his own football team. So it just did not. With all of his parental duties and family duties and things, it was becoming a bit too cumbersome for him to come across the state on a weekly basis for 3.5-4 months and call FAU games. And so he's still going to be very much involved. Still going to see him, but it just didn't make sense for him to be on the broadcast any longer. So we're currently in search mode, and we'll see. We'll see who is on the mic next to mine come East Lansing, Michigan State. But I don't know who it's going to be, and we're very early in the process there.
Well, we're looking forward to whoever it is. And Chris, thank you for the 11 years and all the years before that, being an alum and a football player. There's only one person that hit harder than Aziza Shire, and that was Chris Bartels.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the greatest stories.
He used to knock the crap out of people.
Like walk on into special teams contributor, into captain, into defensive MVP, into Sun Belt champion, and New Orleans Bowl champion. It doesn't get much better than the story.
Lavicka partner.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm selling myself short. You're exactly right. Into 11-year partner of Ken Lavicka. That just puts the capper on the entire thing.
Now, Ken, what's the funniest Chris Bartels story that you have that you can? I guess you could share on the internet.
Family, right. I don't want him disowned.
It's a family show, Ken.
I think that certainly. Every time we went to Western Kentucky, for whatever reason, the Sun Belt and Conference USA, it was always scheduled to conspire against FAU. And at Western Kentucky, the broadcast booth is basically in the element.
Oh my God, it is.
It is open, and it was always in November. Always in November, so it's cold. I mean, wind is blowing, and every single year, Western Kentucky would promise us a space heater in the booth. The great thing is there's a ton of room in that booth, a ton of room. It's basically their face full of cold the entire time. So we'll have a space heater. We'll have a space heater. And every time we went to Western Kentucky, Chris Bartels would spend the entire trip to Bowling Green. Oh, man, it's going to be awesome. The space heater, I really appreciate them coming through for us. And every time we'd show up and we'd walk in the room and there's no space heater, and he would be furious. Where's the space heater? They said there was going to be a space heater. He would track down the SID. Yeah, say, we'll see what we can do. It would never come, but he allowed himself to get his hopes up every time we went to Western Kentucky, and it was the same furious, angry, visceral result every time. Where's the space heater? All the man wanted was comfort, and they made him broadcast in the elements every single time.
Did they ever bring a space heater, or was that, or are we still waiting for the space heater?
False hope.
Western Kentucky, there's a lot of fine folks there, but when it comes to their space heater guarantees, they're a bunch of dirty, scummy liars there in Bowling Green.
Oh, you heard it here first.
I feel like there is no better
but dirty,
place
scummy liars.
I feel like there's no better place to end than Ken Lavicka getting almost as frustrated as Chris about a space heater in a press box.
It's when Jim Slowiak's having to come to the rescue with those little hand warmers.
That's hilarious.
Straight.
Shout out to Jim Slowiak.
Yeah.
Did you see him sleep? Did you watch the softball tournament?
No.
There was a shot of him sleeping behind home plate.
Oh my God, there was.
Well, the man drove day and night to get there. I'm sure he's exhausted.
Poor
Jim. I love Jim. Jim is an absolute FAU legend. And for those of you watching who don't know Jim, you do know Jim if you go to the games because he goes to every sporting event wearing a bright red FAU fire helmet, and we love him for that.
He's the man.
Worst place in the country to go to call a game, Ken. Where is it? Worst place. Is it worse?
Monroe, Louisiana.
I have my guess. My guess is Murfreesboro.
No, Murfreesboro is fine. Monroe, Louisiana.
Monroe. Okay.
Is
thank God we don't go there anymore.
Louisiana, Monroe, and that town. When you're known for Duck Dynasty, you inherently are at a disadvantage when it comes to how people from the outside view your community. But that football stadium at ULM is a travesty. And every time we went there, there was the same hive of dangerous wasps that had manifested itself outside of the booth. And you would put out a crowd mic, and there were corpses, wasp corpses all over the broadcast booth, like literal decomposing corpses.
You're surrounded by death.
Yeah, and so what would happen though is because they never bothered to send in an exterminator. This is over like a 6-year span. You'd put out the crowd mic, and during the game, you could hear hitting the crowd. The wasps are. I'm like Van Camp out of the shotgun, 2nd and 6 from the 35 of Louisiana Monroe. And the wasps are literally flying in the microphone, and it never changed. It was the same thing every single time. And so Louisiana Monroe is still to this day the worst place that I've broadcast, and this probably applies to basketball as well.
Basketball too.
I feel like we should end this on a positive note. Ken, you've had a lot of great calls for FAU and a lot of great moments trying to call one. I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was it the round of 64 last year where you had Theo holding up the Ethernet cord?
No, that was Elite 8.
Oh my God, it was Elite 8
at Madison Square Garden.
I just remember looking across because I was on the other side in the scores table. I go, what is Theo and Ken doing? What are they doing over here? So I guess favorite FAU call of all time, is it that Elite 8 call or?
I mean, that's the one, and this is where.
Is that the one where you were standing up?
That was Memphis.
That was
Memphis. That was Memphis.
That was good too. That was good too.
But this is why I don't like people filming me. I do radio for a reason because I'm twitchy and odd when I'm calling games.
You are definitely a weirdo.
They think that I have some sort of nerve problem. So the one that will, and this is where I'm so blessed to have been in this role for as long as I have and then get that opportunity. I love the fact that FAU has a call that is going to live forever in its pantheon, its history. And that Elite 8 call is probably the most memorable call that I've ever made.
Do you have it memorized?
No, I don't actually, and I've watched it plenty of times, but I have not memorized
it right now.
I know the
Houston. We have a problem.
Florida Atlantic's coming to town looking for a trophy. The Houston, Houston, you have a problem thing had popped into my head earlier that day, just in case, but I didn't really think much of it. I think I was walking to get some bacon in the team room that morning, and I'm like, hey, I should just have some fallback just in case they win this game. But that was I don't like scripting out stuff. I hate it. I absolutely hate scripting out stuff, but I wanted something to where then if I started getting lost in all the chaos around me, I could fall back on it. And so that's where that came from. Now, the FAU looking for a trophy thing, I saved myself because I could feel myself losing it during the course of that call.
That was awesome.
Yeah, no, and
that was awesome. And I was like it was super happy for the players and of course the university and everything. But I remember looking down from the section we were in and seeing you down there in the red shirt and just being like, man, I am so happy for this guy. And I'm so proud of this guy that he's been through it for
That's
20 years. He saw Rex Walters laying on the ground. He saw Coach Jarvis get kicked out of a game. You know, he called games in Louisiana Monroe, and now he's here at Madison Square Garden for 2 games and just gave the best call in FAU history. I remember looking down and just being so like overwhelmed with emotion and seeing you down there. Like that was just like just knowing how big and important it was. That was awesome.
I appreciate it. Hey, Kev, how are we doing on time? Can we still talk, or is there like a
I mean, we can go for a couple more minutes.
Okay. All right. I want to so I appreciate that, Mike. And the reason that I had never really gotten a full sense, and I've been doing this for a long time, of how many people listen to games, how many people knew where to go to hear games, how many people knew who I was. Even if I was been around for a long time, I didn't know, outside of the couple dozen people that regularly attend coaches shows, how many people actually listen to games, or at least in part rely on me to convey action to them. One of the most gratifying things about that Final Four run, other than seeing all these guys that I love succeed at the highest level of the sport and seeing the school reach the profile that it did and has, is I can't tell you how many hundreds of people I heard from said, man, Ken, so happy for you. Been listening to you for years. I had no idea that was even a thing. Like, I'd show up, call the games. I'm there for a pocket of people. I'm trying to give as high-end national caliber a call as I can every single time. I just didn't know how many people it was reaching. To hear from so many people that I've been listening to you for years, that was extremely, extremely gratifying. And I'm not saying that it made that entire thing worth it, but it also proved to me that the fan base is larger than even I have given it credit for. And it feels good when you come to the realization that you mean a lot to a lot of people in some capacity. And that was definitely an eye-opening moment for me. And I appreciated that. And I just know from my end, I have a lot of confidence in me, in my abilities, in my talents. And I believe that I've been giving FAU a national caliber broadcast for a long, long time. 100%. And that's the payoff.
100%. I think I even put a tweet or something on Facebook out about it. Remember, I think I said something about how lucky we are to have somebody like you, because what's going to happen to FAU if Alabama needs a call guy and they call on Ken Lavicka because they heard him, at FAU, and how emotional he is and how energetic he is in the calls. Like, someone eventually is going to come for you, Ken. That, right? Like,
I'm not for everybody, and I'm not going to change the way I broadcast to conform to some shell of what a cookie cutter broadcaster.
Sure, but talent gets recognized, right? And when you're good at something, there's a better place for you somewhere. And I'm hoping that day never comes, because I do love making you as uncomfortable as I can before a home basketball game when I rub the back of your head or whatever when I walk by.
That feels great, though.
You like that?
Yeah,
I'll continue to do it.
The sensory, my sensory capacity.
Like, it's me. It's me. You don't even flinch anymore.
All right. I'm like, hey, I get this knot right here. So, but I appreciate that. But also, I'm very proud because it doesn't happen often anymore. And when you are in a landscape where some colleges have eliminated radio broadcasts altogether, or they're not sending broadcasters on the road, like Northern Colorado, they don't send a broadcaster on the road. There's schools that have decided just to go the online route, or just, it's on ESPN Plus. Like, unserious schools do stuff like that. Unserious schools who don't care about their fans do stuff like that. Florida Atlantic has never even entertained the possibility. And so for me to be able to spend 17 years at FAU doing what I do and become synonymous with FAU, that's important for a fan base. That's important for continuity, I think, at least, to have a voice that fans know is going to be there, that they trust, that they respect, and they know in the biggest moments is going to convey it, and in the worst moments is going to convey it in his own way. Because I'm proud of, I hate at the moment, and I still have flashbacks about the San Diego State game winner, but damn it if I'm not unbelievably proud of the call that I made, because I didn't fall on the floor and start sobbing or go silent and mail it in. I made it as professional a call as I could, while also conveying that it was the FAU call that you were hearing. So I've always tried to be as first class as possible to FAU, and in turn, FAU has delivered me the same. And so I appreciate the kind words, Mike, but it does mean a lot to me, though, too, to be and continue to be synonymous with Florida Atlantic. And I'm a big believer in finishing what I've started, and I'd love to see a national championship be tossed into the air at some point.
Well, I hope to hell that you're the one who calls it. I really do. I really do.
I feel like there's probably no better place to end with the voice of FAU for 17 years and counting, and hopefully 17 more at least. Ken Lavicka. Ken, of course, thanks for joining us, and I'm sure we'll be doing this again at some point.
Yeah, we need a part 2, because I still have other stories and things.
there's so much. Like as we've been talking, I've just been thinking about like all the things we've done over the last 17 years, and like there's some stuff, man. Like remember the trip to Cambridge?
I'm sorry, I just can't get over Mike rubbing Ken's head during a broadcast. That's the only thing that's like still stuck in my head.
No, I won't do it while he's live.
Okay, so it's only before.
It's before the game.
Yeah, it's before, and it's I'm anxious and tight, and it loosens up the shoulder muscles. It's good. It's good. It's not like I'm asking, hey, Mike, could you scratch my back? Get low down there. Yeah.
Get the crevasse. Get the crevasse.
There's the mic shoulder grab, like neck rub. There's a couple of fans who will come over, and while I'm on the air delivering the pregame show or getting set for tip, like they'll come over and they'll dap me up. I'm hugging people, the whole thing. So it's me just sort of double and triple tasking. Anybody who wants to come over, give me a hug, dap me up before tip off, you're more than welcome. I'm easily accessible. I'm not going to put a body man in front of me. It's all good.
Just make sure you don't do it during the most important call of the game. I think that might be a little bit.
Yeah, well, during action, if fans could avoid making physical contact with me during action, but during media timeouts, fine, it's great. And if you can make it up to the football booth, you're always invited. Katrina McCormick and her body people might kick you out, but you're always welcome.
Kevin, he's really good. He does the no look. He does the no look fist bump. He'll be on the microphone.
He is awesome at multitasking.
Like a ninja. I'm just bam, bam, bam.
Yeah, you're good.
It's all good. All right, so we'll do a part 2. I think what we've gleaned from this is we're going to do a part 2. Birdman, I appreciate you. Kev, I really appreciate you. And go Owls! And I can't wait for the game at Michigan State with analyst TBD.
Do you want to just leave anybody with anything you got coming up?
Oh yeah, thank you.
I think I want to give you a chance to plug something, because I know we got this is definitely.
I was going to go to that, so that's probably the best way to end. Ken, love it, man.
All right. So since I am currently without a full-time job, I've started a new project because I have a lot of time on my hands. It is called By All Accounts. My buddy Zach Krantz from WQAM in Miami, him and I have partnered up for a YouTube show. You scroll through social media every single day. We find those same tweets and Instagram posts, and we actually break them down and we react to them on By All Accounts. Comes out Mondays and Fridays. YouTube.com/@allaccounts-show. Subscribe to it, or download the podcast, rss.com/podcast/all-accounts-show. But it's right there for you. It's a ton of fun, a super easy listen. And if you got kids in the car, maybe cover their ears a little bit. There's maybe some unsavory language at times, but I'm an adult. We're all adults. We can handle it. But again, By All Accounts, youtube.com/@all-accounts-show. Subscribe to it. You're not going to be disappointed. I think you're really going to like it.
Make sure you guys check that out. Ken is extremely entertaining. We look forward to that show, Ken. Thank you so much.
Boys, appreciate you. Go Owls.
Go Owls.